on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Video Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. Today we're going to be having a bit of a different show. I'm going to be heading down to Illinois tomorrow with my beautiful fiance, Anna. We're going to look at some wedding venues, visit her family that it's been a while that we've been able to see them. So that's going to cut my work week short. Which means I got to condense some of this stuff down. The podcast will be shorter this week. Studs and Duds will be shorter this week. And because of that, we're not going to do the typical programming here where we recap game by game the week before. We'll get back to that next week. But this week, it's going to look a little differently. I'm going to use this week to update my quarterbacks rankings. A lot of the show is quarterback topical anyway. So we're going to do my quarterback tier list starting from your backups and prospects all the way up to the elite, and then I'll get into the mailbag. So I still think it's going to be a great show. I think you guys are going to really like it. So before we get into that, I just want to say some housekeeping. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit that like button. I know you get tired of hearing it, but it really does help. So please just take a second to hit that like down below. It helps share the podcast and support my channel and all that good stuff. If you're listening to this through the audio podcast, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, whatever it is, please do leave a review. And then if you want to support the show, you can do so on Patreon. It's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. And you'll also get exclusive access to the Patreon mailbag that we will, of course, end this show with. So let's hop in to talk some football. First things first, though. Wow. I made some enemies this week on Twitter. And, geez, man, I'm going to be taking a break from Twitter for a few days. It's so toxic. You wonder why we have a mental health problem in this country. I mean, I had to take a step back, take a deep breath, and just be like, whew, man, it's just ridiculous. Like, if you disagree with someone, it goes straight to making that person regret all of their life decisions. Nothing they've ever said is relevant. You said one thing I disagree with, and everything you've done is discredited, and you're a moron, and all of these things. And look, I get it. I do. I'm not perfect of this. I'm trying to be better myself. But man, if you disagree with someone, try to see things from their side. Try to understand their logic. And all I would say, if you want to help, do your part to make the world a better place, because right now everyone's trapped inside. Twitter very much is a lot of people's world. And if you want to make the world a better place and have people have better positive vibes, treat people like you would in person. Just say, yeah, man, I disagree with that. I think you're wrong. Here's why. Don't just resort to, at least in the football realm, this moron's obviously never watched a game. Come on. Be better than that. And the last thing I'll say there, and I'm not trying to make enemies with this fan base, but Bills fans, oh my God. I'm all about it, man. I get it. I'm from Minneapolis. I get the smaller market thing, and we're not even Buffalo small market. But I get it, the us against the world mentality, the pay attention to us mentality. I do. I really do. But every year there's this fan base that emerges. Last year it was Niners, Ravens fans. Were really tough to deal with, and it leaves a lasting impression. So I've been in the Bills' corner. I really have. But I'm not going to lie, man. After what the reaction was for Bills Mafia, for me not ranking Josh Allen as a top 10 quarterback yesterday, it really makes me want to not root for the Bills this year and hope that you guys fail. I'm sorry. It's just the way that you guys rubbed me on Twitter last night and really all day yesterday. And some other people were showing me some stuff about Bills Mafia. They're like, dude, just stay away, man. They are something else. And this mob mentality is a huge turnoff for the other 31 fans in the league. So I'm just saying, Bills fans, be careful. You're making a lot more enemies than you are friends right now. And I don't know if that's what you want. I would want people in my corner. I wouldn't want to be, becoming the new Philadelphia Eagles fan base. But let's talk some football here. Be better on Twitter. That's how we're going to start the show. But let's get into the football talk here. And we are going to go through all of the quarterbacks. Some of them we'll obviously gloss over, and some of them we're going to spend a lot more time on. There's some more polarizing quarterbacks to discuss right now. I'm going to spend a lot of time on Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson will probably get a lot of FaceTime here. So I want to pull up my my quarterbacks tier list. So I have 10 different tiers of quarterback, some more significant than others. And I will just, as we get to the next tier, I will kind of describe what the quarterbacks in this tier are. So you're going to start at the bottom with your backup or project tiers. And by the way, I'm sorry if I forgot anyone that may have emerged as a starter here that isn't going to get discussed here. I think everyone's covered here. Yeah, your bottom tier is backups and projects. Pretty straightforward. Guys that you don't want on the field right now. Some of them might have more upside than others. Some of them might be smart quarterbacks that just don't have the physical talent. So these are going to be Joe Flacco, Case Keenum, Jacob Eason, Jacob Fromm, your Taysom Hill, Jarrett Stidham, Kyle Allen, Phillip Walker, kind of that cluster of backups that might be more interesting than your typical, whatever, Tim Boyle or you Luke Falk, like total no-name quarterbacks. These are kind of relevant backups or projects. We won't spend any time on those. Those are pretty straightforward. Then we have fringe starters who are prospects. I have 3 different levels of fringe starters. So these are going to be players in kind of the 25 to 35 range of total rankings that are guys that if they're on the field as your starter, depending on kind of the volatility of it, you're either optimistic for the future or you're kind of like, well, he can kind of get the job done, but we would never want this guy to be our long-term answer. So the bottom of the fringe starters are prospect fringe starters, guys that are playing because they have that potential, right? They're not probably top 30 quarterbacks in the league. They're probably not helping you win a lot of football games right now, but you're hoping they develop tendencies that can one day take advantage of, for the most part, physical tools to make them a starter. And at the bottom, we're just going to go from the bottom down to the top, or the bottom up to the top. So the bottom of this tier is going to be Mitchell Trubisky, who you can probably write off, and there's a reason he's the first guy that's closest to that backup or project here. He just got benched, probably for good. He might be getting Blake Bortles here, but I still think there's a less than 1% chance that he goes into, say, New England, or he ends up with Kyle Shanahan or something. I still think there's a chance he could respond and become a starting caliber quarterback, somewhat similar to like the Ryan Tannehill revival that seemed very unlikely. Scheme matters in the NFL. So mostly writing off Mitch Trubisky, but I still think there's a sliver of potential in there. Then we have Dwayne Haskins next, who just has not really impressed me. He's not much of a playmaker. He's making mistakes, which you don't like to see. Now, he doesn't have much of an offensive line, doesn't have a whole lot of help with his weapons, but he doesn't seem to have that it factor about him. And then when you mix in the fact that he's making mistakes, you can question his accuracy. He just has a long way to go before he's even a quality starting quarterback, and maybe he does get the help over the years, but I don't feel like that's the direction we're going in, and I think that's relatively consensus right now. Then we got Drew Lock, total prospect, right? He's got the traits. He can escape the pocket, he can throw on the move, he's relatively accurate, but everything from the neck up, you got some pretty major questions as far as processing defenses, making the right decisions, coming off of your first read. How predictable is he going to be in those unpredictable situations? That's a big problem with guys like Mitch Trubisky. Unfortunately, the injury is cutting his year short, which was in some ways a make or break season for Drew Lock, because it's not like they spent this elite top 10 pick on him, right? He's a second year player, or a second round pick in his second year, which means he's already going to be entering the second to last year of his contract next year before we don't even know anything about him. And that rookie contract's really valuable. So I do put him in this prospect range. It's unfortunate the injury kind of removed our ability to evaluate him, but the timeline, I think, is shrinking for him. And if the Broncos are looking at Trevor Lawrence, if Justin Fields impresses, Trey Lance, if those guys become legitimate top 5 prospects and the Broncos have that sort of pick, which I think is quite likely, I do think that they will strongly consider moving on from Drew Lock. Then I have Jordan Love in this tier. I was a big fan of Jordan Love coming out of the draft. And while in this moment he is a prospect, there's no denying that. He hasn't even won the backup job from Tim Boyle. But I do very much believe in the upside of Jordan Love. I firmly believe in the evidence that we've seen from quarterbacks that get to sit and develop, especially under a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who seems to be doing all the right things as far as mentoring him and kind of showing him how to be a badass on the field and overcome adversity. I do very much believe in the future for Jordan Love, even if we are years away from seeing it. And with how Rodgers has revived, that could be a Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo situation, right? Where Rodgers would be 40 years old, and he might still want to keep playing, and the Packers are going to have to make a decision. Now, luckily, the Packers will get that fifth-year option on Jordan Love, so they really get 5 years to keep Jordan Love in the kitchen. But yeah, I would not want to necessarily see him out on the field right now. Then we actually have Alex Smith in the fringe starter grouping as a prospect, because there's all these unknowns with Alex Smith, right? We know what he looks like when he's healthy, but physically speaking, I applaud him for getting healthy, and it's incredible. And there's a chance that we're getting closer and closer to maybe seeing Alex Smith. It's a conversation that I think Washington's going to start having over the next few weeks. If they do decide that Haskins might not be the guy, they might want to kick the tires on Alex Smith. And worst case, if he looks like his old self, I mean, look at Cam Newton. I didn't think he'd ever be back. If he looks like his old self, there's trade value there, right? I mean, they're in a rebuild. They're probably not going to recommit and double down to build around a 37-year-old Alex Smith, but there's some trade value there, right? They could get a third, fourth-round pick for Alex Smith, so it could be worth seeing. And he could help establish the culture and maybe help you win some more games. So I do consider him a prospect just because of the physical tools that we don't know are there. His arm talent, he is 37 years old. We haven't seen him throw a football in a while. It was never a great arm to begin with, so... and then the mobility was always a big deal for Alex Smith. We don't know how well he moves after that broken leg. All right, so then we have just your straight-up fringe starters. These are not prospects. We kind of know what they are, right? There's a low likelihood that they're ever going to become more than what they are. So they're just guys that are kind of what you might call a Band-Aid. Like, they could start, but you're not building a franchise around this team. And if he's your starter, you're very actively looking for an upgrade. So that's going to be starting with Tyrod Taylor for the LA Chargers. Then you have Nick Foles for the Chicago Bears. We have Marcus Mariota for the LA or Las Vegas Raiders, and Jacoby Brissett. Very clearly, these quarterbacks, when they have a starting job, their team is looking to replace them. The evidence is there. The Chargers drafted Justin Herbert to get rid of Tyrod Taylor. Foles has bounced around the league. He's never stuck. Marcus Mariota, Titans got rid of him. He's backing up Derek Carr. And then Jacoby Brissett got his opportunity, and the Colts were like, we're gonna go somewhere else. So they're fine. You can win football games with them, but you're never gonna feel very good about them creating out of structure or elevating the players around them. And then fringe starter, this is our last tier of the fringe starters. These are high volatility fringe starters. So these are guys that are kind of past the prospect level. Like, they're better than guys like Mitch Trubisky, Drew Lock, even Dwayne Haskins. Like, they've shown more than that, right? Like, you feel better about them. But there's still guys that, man, I don't know if they are actual, consistent, sustainable starting quarterbacks in the league because of the volatility. Because they have their highs, they have their lows. You get excited one week, and then the next week you're like pulling your hair out because you don't know what they're doing. And to me, that starts with Daniel Jones. And that's what I just described isn't necessarily Daniel Jones. He's consistently inconsistent. Because some of the other guys in this list, guys like Sam Darnold, Fitzpatrick, Herbert's kind of a different conversation, Jameis Winston, those guys will have really, really bad weeks that lose their team the game. And then they'll have really big, explosive weeks that win their team the game. Daniel Jones, it's like every week he's going to put up like 250 plus passing yards. He's going to make some exciting plays. He's going to push the ball downfield. But he's also probably going to get sacked 4 or 5 times a game because he has no pocket presence. And he's also probably going to turn the ball over once or twice a game. And it's just, that's inner game, very high volatility. And I don't know if that's I do know that that's not a sustainable way to win football games, but I don't know if he's ever going to weed that part of his game out. And I think we get another, 13 games to make that decision on Daniel Jones. But if the Giants have a top 3 pick, I think he's out of there. Excuse me. Then we got Jameis Winston, pretty self-explanatory, 30 for 30 club, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. He fits the mold here. He will have some big weeks, though. And then you have Justin Herbert, who we're still collecting information on him. I've been more impressed by Herbert than I thought I would. Some of the stuff we saw at Oregon has popped up. They probably beat the Chiefs if he just takes that first down out of structure there when he just lofted it in the middle of the field, a costly interception that let the Chiefs back into the game. Another interception this week against the Panthers. There's some high volatility there with Justin Herbert. I think he belongs in this group, but I do think he's more than a prospect. He's got tools. He's clearly picked up the playbook quicker than I expected. He can play within rhythm relatively well. And what's shown up to me about Herbert, and a big reason I'd put him above Daniel Jones, who I had a second-round grade on both those prospects. What's shown up to me is the pocket presence is much more there than I anticipated. He got pretty good protection at Oregon. They got rid of the ball really quickly, so I think that could be a reason we didn't get to see a whole lot. He's dealing with a lot more pass rush and a lot more pressure now, but he looks more comfortable navigating the pocket than I expected, and showing a little more of that it factor that we talk about when it comes to pocket movement and keeping your eyes downfield while you navigate the pocket. It's really important. He's showing some more of that. That's impressive. So we're going to continue to collect information on Justin Herbert. It's very clear I did not like him in the draft. But I just want this to add to the evidence that I'd look at guys objectively once they get to the NFL. I'll say my opinions come draft day, but I'm not going to glue myself to those opinions. I very quickly admit I was wrong about Baker Mayfield. And I'm leaning towards saying I was wrong about Justin Herbert. Now, Daniel Jones, he's looking like a second or a third round prospect. He really is. He just has never been able to show some of those things that I question coming out. Herbert, here we are, week 1, week 2 of his career. He's shown some traits that I wasn't anticipating. So I'm relatively impressed by what I've seen from Herbert. It hasn't been perfect. A lot of the bad things I said about him have shown up on tape. So we're going to have to collect more information and see what that all is going to mean for the future of his career. But still very much a high volatility starting caliber player right now. Then we have Sam Darnold above Justin Herbert. There's been a lot more bad than good with Sam Darnold. The Jets have been an absolute organizational dysfunction, but I don't think Sam Darnold is completely free of blame. He has not really ever developed in the NFL, and that's a concern. The Jets have done a terrible job doing that, but I think if he can't come out and beat Brett Ripien on a short week tomorrow night, yikes, man. He belongs in this tier. I do actually expect, though, him to play pretty well tomorrow night. But if he doesn't, that is the ultimate red flag. And I get it. The Jets are a just complete disaster. But I think it's probably time to move on from Sam Darnold if he doesn't beat Brett Ripien tomorrow night, and then assumedly they will go 1-15 or 0-16 and have the ability to draft Trevor Lawrence. I think you get something for Sam Darnold. Someone will be interested in Sam Darnold. I know that. I think it was 29 out of 32 NFL teams had him as the number one player in that draft class. Something like that. Or said they would have taken him number one overall if they needed a quarterback. Something like that. And don't quote me on that, because that's just something I remember hearing from somebody back when he was drafted. But I do think they could get something for Sam Darnold, and then you just blow everything up. But I just don't think this is a fit. But we're not going to spend much more time on Sam Darnold. He's been very highly volatile. He has had some amazing games, right? Go watch what he did against the Cowboys last year. He has some games where he frankly looks like a top 10 quarterback. But it's the 12 other games in that season where he looks like Daniel Jones. He looks like Jameis Winston, where he's just this turnover wreck. So The last guy in this tier is going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's he's much unlike these other guys. He doesn't have those physical tools, but stylistically very similar. The difference with Fitzpatrick is he's very good pre-snap, recognizing a defense. But once that snap breaks down, he's pretty highly volatile. He'll make some mistakes. He'll be aggressive. But he is a fringe starter, as we've seen over the course of his career. We kind of know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. So then our next tier up are going to be much different types of players. These are going to be replacement level starters. And outside of one player in this group, these guys to me they are what they are. They are smart players. They do a few things really well. They're accurate, especially in the short to intermediate game. They're guys that if you put a scheme around them with a lot of good catch and run targets, a good offensive line, a good play caller, and receivers that can get open early, they're going to have some success in this league and could very well win a lot of games. But you start to take some of those pieces away and you start to lean on that quarterback's ability to create a little more, you're going to get hurt. And that's going to start with Andy Dalton. I mean, look at what we're seeing in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is doing an incredible job, but that is what Andy Dalton was dealing with for the last 2 or 3 years. Picture Andy Dalton, Dalton has some nice traits, right? He's got a good pre-snap processor. He's good at playing in rhythm. He's relatively accurate. He can run a little bit. He can make most of the throws on the field. He's a quality starter. We saw him play close to an MVP level and have one of the best teams in the NFL about 4 or 5 years ago. But playing behind Cincinnati for that long, I think broke a lot of that confidence. So I do think he's a guy that if you put an outstanding situation around him, he can play at a starting caliber level still. And then we have Gardner Minshew above him. He's a little different than Andy Dalton because he's much more instinctive in the pocket and navigating pressure and creating plays out of rhythm. And I think from a processor standpoint, he's pretty similar to Andy Dalton. Accuracy and arm talent, I think they're extremely they're just identical, I think. Minshew just has a little bit more of that it factor, so I would put him just above Andy Dalton. And then Teddy Bridgewater, very similar, right? Doesn't have the arm talent, just like those three we just mentioned. But Bridgewater and Minshew are very similar prospects. They both can navigate pressure. They'll extend plays. Very efficient in the short to intermediate game. Both these guys have very similar offenses with good catch and run threats, quality offensive lines in front of them, play callers that are going to get rid of the ball pretty quickly. So very similar there with Minshew and Teddy Bridgewater. And then you have Derek Carr, who's a little different stylistically. Same idea though, where he wants to play in one of these offenses where he's got protection in front of him. He can drop it off to Josh Jacobs. He can hit Darren Waller on a 10-yard crossing route. A lot of screens, run the ball effectively. The difference with Derek Carr is he actually has the physical talent to go vertical, but I'm getting close to being done with expecting him to get there. The one thing that is supremely different between Bridgewater and Minshew than Derek Carr is Carr just does not create. I tweeted this week. There's very few players on this entire list, even down to like the backups and projects. There's very few players in the NFL that I want less on my team on a 3rd and 7 because Derek Carr does not see the whole field. He just doesn't. He not only that, but he doesn't see the pocket. He doesn't know how to sense pressure. He doesn't know when to step up. He doesn't know when it's appropriate to run. He doesn't know when it's appropriate to step up, see a slim throwing window on a corner route, and frankly, he's just not aggressive enough taking chances. He just wants to take that check down. We saw it this week. Bill Belichick knows that. He literally double-teamed possibly the worst offensive player on the field, which was Jalen Richard, on a 3rd and 7. He double-teamed him out of the backfield. The safety came down. The linebacker and the safety swarmed the check down, and Derek Carr panicked. He panicked because his safety blanket was gone. And he was like, oh my God, what do I do now? He doesn't have that it factor. But what he does have is a much better ability to play in rhythm and have a wider array of offense than guys like Minshew and Bridgewater because his arm talent and his vertical accuracy is so much better. So I think all of these guys need a good offensive line, good play callers in front of them. So if you can get that, I'd rather have Derek Carr because if it's his first read, if you can scheme up that crosser to Henry Ruggs, he's going to stick it on him 25 yards downfield because he has some more of those physical traits. But I think Derek Carr is what he is at this point. I'm done hoping he figures things out. It was supposed to be this year with Henry Ruggs. And it just hasn't been the case. We saw it against the Saints. He had wide open shots vertically that he passed up. Same thing here against New England. And then this last guy in the replacement level starter tier, again, kind of similar to Herbert. Like we just need to collect more information, but this is going to be where I put Tua. I think if he stepped on the field right now, that's kind of a little bit what we'd see is the best version of those guys we just described. And I think there's a pretty big gap up to our next player. So maybe Tua needs his own tier between replacement level starter and our next tier. But I won't talk about Tua because he hasn't really played yet. This is just kind of where I expect he would be if we saw him, would be a steady starter that I don't think, especially in the Dolphins, is going to create a ton. I don't think he did a particularly good job creating at Alabama. And just like his arm is good, not great. He's pretty accurate. Honestly, I think Tua and Dak Prescott are remarkably similar prospects. That is a comparison I didn't necessarily see come draft time. We'll talk a lot about Dak, but I'll just hint at that. A lot of the stuff as far as like sensing pressure, knowing when to extend plays on third down, that's some stuff that I saw from Tua where I was like, and there wasn't a lot of, like we said about Herbert, like he had such good pass protection. There wasn't a lot of opportunities to evaluate that, but that is a little question mark I have about Tua. But I'm not going to spend any more time talking about Tua because we just haven't seen him yet. He's starting with, like I said, a blank slate once he gets on the field. So when that happens, we'll definitely talk a lot of Tua, but we're just kind of waiting on that. So I'm gonna have a little pineapple juice here before we get into our next tier, which is a big one. All right, so our next tier here are the good quarterbacks. These are quality starters, and then a lot of them are very similar, but obviously every quarterback's a little different. So these are just good quality starters, but guys that, frankly, I wouldn't feel as a general manager particularly comfortable paying the type of money that a lot of these guys are going to demand. $35+ million. I think when you have a quarterback in this tier, for the most part, you're talking about they need everything around them to be Super Bowl teams. They usually need an elite defense. A lot of these guys need pass protection or fantastic receiving groups. They just don't have the traits to consistently play at a high level out of rhythm. And that's really when you get into the elite, transcendent quarterbacks, are guys that can play out of rhythm, whether it's navigating the pocket, whether it's making ridiculous scrambling plays. It's true. Like, that really can help consistently elevate your play on a year-to-year basis. Or just having elite arm talent or having elite accuracy, things that Tom Brady has done over the years. Because he doesn't necessarily have the great athleticism, but he's made up for it in other ways. These quarterbacks are good quarterbacks that don't have enough elite traits for me to say I'm comfortable paying this man top dollar, because usually the guys in this tier demand that. So it's going to start with Phillip Rivers, and the Colts did this the right way. They got him on a 1-year, $25 million contract. That's exactly what I'm talking about in this tier. Like, if you have Phillip Rivers with no commitment on a team-friendly contract, that's the way to do it with these guys, where you're not tied to them. If you get an opportunity to pounce on a better long-term option, I would do it. So I appreciate what the Colts are doing here, but we're seeing a kind of predictable result from Phillip Rivers. He's got a better offensive line, so we know he can play in rhythm. He doesn't have the elite arm talent. We're not seeing some explosive vertical passing game. Him and T.Y. Hilton are just not really working together. But he is a really smart quarterback. He's going to play in rhythm. You know what you're getting pretty much every week, which unfortunately in Rivers' case is going to include probably an interception every week. A big result of that is he loves to throw with anticipation, and I think it's a little different than it wasn't with LA, because I think we were getting those interceptions in LA because he wasn't getting the pass protection. That ball just had to come out a second sooner than he would have hoped. I think we're seeing the interceptions in Indianapolis now because he doesn't have that chemistry with these guys yet. And a lot of these guys are young players, or just, frankly, not the best receivers in the world, period. But you're getting a quality starter in Phillip Rivers. I think as the season goes on, too, you're going to see that timing with the receivers get better and better. If him and T.Y. Hilton could develop some sort of chemistry similar to what he had with Keenan Allen, that would be huge. But the COVID season with less practice and being their first year together, we're just not seeing that chemistry there day one. That's a big thing I'm looking for from Phillip Rivers moving forward, but he's at least going to be in this kind of good quality starter tier. Then I've got, still in the AFC South, Ryan Tannehill. He is the perfect fit in the outside zone scheme, because Tannehill, I feel like I kind of always knew this, but I never said it out loud. He just is a relatively accurate vertical thrower of the football. He's a good, strong arm. He's very Kirk Cousins-esque, Jared Goff-esque. He's found a great scheme. He'll see his first read. He'll hit that moving pocket, or he'll hit that play action drop, let it go. Accurate, beautiful ball. Let A.J. Brown, let Corey Davis, let Jonnu Smith do the work. I think he's in a perfect landing spot. We saw Ryan Tannehill for a long time in a situation that was not what he has right now in Tennessee. Very quality starter. He has really proved me wrong. You know, I thought Marcus Mariota had a chance of losing his job to Ryan Tannehill just because I thought Mariota was so just the opposite of Tannehill, where he just didn't play with that confidence. But you know, he's found a great home. He's a quality starter in Tennessee. I think if you took him out and put him in Indianapolis, that runs a scheme that's much more predicated on, you know, getting the ball out quickly, not making mental mistakes every single snap, it would look a lot different. So I like what I'm seeing from Tannehill, but that's another thing with these good quarterbacks is a lot of them are very system dependent. These are kind of your system quarterbacks, right? Then we got Cam Newton. I would have put him in this tier before the injury. I think that with the injury, he looks more or less what he used to be. Now, he's a little more volatile. Against Seattle, we saw him kill it. The accuracy was incredible. The decision-making was perfect. He brought it that night. He's clearly had that game circled. He was like, I'm going to play the best game I've played in years, get people talking about me. The next week, a noon game against a Raiders defense that stinks. He's like, you know, maybe taking the week off a little bit, and it showed. He made some mistakes against the Raiders. He wasn't exactly perfect week one either, but he's clearly a quality starter. I mean, all in on Bill Belichick, finding Cam Newton for a 1-year, basically league minimum contract. But I think some of the scheme stuff comes into play here, right? I think his success as a quality starter is dependent on a team utilizing what he brings as a runner. And that's a big thing. You know, if you put him in a team that's not going to do that, he is not going to be a consistent passing quarterback. He just doesn't have the vertical either arm talent, or a bigger deal right now is just the accuracy. It's always been a deal for Cam Newton. Now, he's a very sharp quarterback. Like he will get rid of the ball quickly. He will process a defense. But as far as just dropping back 35 times a game, I know he did it against Seattle. Like, that was one game. A lot of quarterbacks do that, have one big game. But I'm not putting Cam Newton in this top 10 great elite category. I think he is going to be very game to game. I think that if you can kind of collapse on him, it doesn't help that he doesn't have the weapons, but being a dominant vertical passer has never been a good part of Cam Newton's game. Scratch the fact that his arm talent isn't what it used to be, which is better than I thought it would be, but it's still not what it used to be. That much is very clear. Go watch 2015 Cam Newton. Like, he is throwing absolute missiles, like Madden 99 throw power missiles. Now it's like, you know, Tom Brady-esque, Joe Burrow-esque. Like, he's got a fine arm, but it's not what it used to be. That much is very clear, and that will change his ability to hit those vertical throws over the course of the season. So, good quality starter. I'm impressed by what I've seen from him this year in New England. But I think we started to see some of those flaws again against the Raiders. That's all the Cam talk I'm gonna have. And then we have Drew Brees. Just a colossal downfall for him. I think this is going to be his last season. I don't think he's having fun playing football right now. It's reminiscent of when Favre lost it, right? When Peyton Manning lost it. Like, Father Time is undefeated. And someday we're going to see this with Tom Brady. I don't think we're seeing it quite yet. Or maybe his is just going to be a more gradual decline. But, man, Drew Brees, he's shown this over the last 2 seasons. As the year has gone on, his arm talent has diminished. And come playoff time, that offense just doesn't look the same, right? And a playoff defense that really zeroes in on keeping that offense within 10 yards. They tackle well. They come to play. And Brees just can't execute. He can't stretch the field and have a counterattack. And last year, he played great. He got hurt with the thumb injury. That gave him time to rest the shoulder, which I think is really what's going on. Picture a quarterback that age. It's not just a game day, right? You're not just coming out on Sunday and throwing 35 times. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You got to keep practicing. And you come out there, you're throwing that ball every day. You can ice it as much as you want, but that thing's going to wear when it's kind of broken down and fatigued the way it is. And last year, he got hurt, right? He missed 6-7 weeks with the thumb injury. That was, in a lot of ways, I think, a blessing for the Saints because they kept winning with Teddy Bridgewater. And then Drew Brees came back, and that arm talent was fresh again. But then come playoff time against the Saints, didn't have it. And now we're seeing it in the first week of the season. Like, his arm just hasn't recovered. And that's a problem. Like, he's obviously still top 2 smartest quarterbacks in the game, if not one. Like, with the continuity in that system, he's going to play a lot sharper than Tom Brady is in Bruce Arians' system. Could at least say that. Like, he can sit there and dissect cover 2, dissect cover 3 all day, but if you man up his guys on 3rd and 9 and you don't let Alvin Kamara catch it 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage and go for 50 yards, Drew Brees can't really beat you in a lot of ways. He's going to rely on Michael Thomas coming down with a contested, potentially double-covered ball on 3rd and 13. And I don't trust him to create. I don't trust him to stretch the field vertically at all. And defenses, I think, are only going to continue to catch on to that. Then we have Kirk Cousins, who I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about Kirk Cousins. I think everyone knows this is where he belongs, right? Right in the middle. He's really good if you can put things around him. He is underrated as far as his vertical accuracy, his arm talent. Hell, he's even a little underrated as an athlete. The problem is, similar to Daniel Jones, I think the big difference between Kirk and Jones is Cousins has much better vertical accuracy and doesn't make as many mistakes reading coverages, though they're relatively similar. Both these guys, though, terrible pocket presence. You'll see some plays where they'll extend plays and stuff because they see it, because it's right in front of their eyes, but they don't have that natural clock in the back of their mind to know when to step up, right? They don't know how to create out of structure, and that's always going to hold Kirk Cousins back. And we're seeing that this year, like especially early. I think getting Justin Jefferson back is going to help bridge the gap a little bit here, but we saw it early. He didn't have his go-to guy, Stephon Diggs, on third and long. Offensive line stinks, and he breaks down. He really breaks down if you don't have guys open downfield, because he doesn't have that natural ability to create and elevate the guys around him. And then we have Baker Mayfield. I struggled with where to put Baker because our next tier is the volatile great quarterbacks. And I think Baker has a real chance over the course of the next 2 months or so to get kind of back into that conversation of these rising young stars. He really showed a rough time last year, and it was Freddie Kitchens. The offensive line got worse, but it showed up again week 1, which was a concern. If it wasn't for the week 1 performance, I'd maybe have him in the volatile great category. But I think he's trying to get back to that. I think he does have some bad tendencies. Something I didn't love about him at Oklahoma was he was so reliant on his best trait, which is, it's fine if you can master that trait and know when you have to back off of it. And what I'm talking about here is throwing those absolute seeds that he can throw over the middle of the field. Like, his ability to throw in the second level behind a linebacker on a crossing route, a hitch, a post sometimes, a slant, his ability to uncork it and just zip it past the ear of a linebacker is unparalleled. He has an amazing arm. That was the biggest thing I whiffed on with Baker, was for whatever reason it was, the Big 12 cameras, whatever it was, the broadcast cameras, I didn't think he had the arm talent that he does. Baker Mayfield has a legitimate top 10 arm in the NFL. And that plays into why he's such a great scheme fit with this outside zone play action shot offense, because he's a very accurate vertical thrower as well. But I still think his best trait is hitting the middle of the field on just darts. But he leans on that too much. And as NFL teams do, which Big 12 teams didn't, the NFL caught on quick. Watch the first 8 games of his season. So many batted balls that led to interceptions or just straight up linebackers noticing that, saying, we need to stop Baker from throwing these kind of skinny posts over the middle of the field, because that's what he made his bread and butter on his rookie year. That was his go-to thing, almost predetermined, to a fault a lot of times. And the NFL caught onto it, and Baker needs to reroute his game, right? And I think we're seeing that in motion. He's still a young guy. I believe in the character. I believe in the physical talent. I believe in the talent around him. I think Kevin Stefanski is a great offensive mind. He obviously has the weaponry around him if Odell can stay healthy. So I think we're seeing the rise of Baker Mayfield. I'm genuinely excited to see what he looks like in the next 2 months. But if he can find a healthy balance now with executing the scheme, they can still utilize that ability for him to just be accurate and deliberate over the middle of the field, but they need to not lean on it so much like they did in the first few years of Baker's career that got him burnt a lot, led to a lot of interceptions. Then we have Jimmy Garoppolo. Ironically, a lot of these guys are players that are playing in this Shanahan scheme, the outside zone play action heavy scheme that's so popular right now. The McVay scheme too. But Jimmy, to me, he's a tough analysis, because we actually don't have a huge sample size, right? We've only seen one season of him as a full-time starter. So honestly, I was really impressed with what he did week 2 against the Jets. He looked really good, playing in rhythm, attack in the middle of the field, which is really the best way this offense operates. I do like his pocket presence. He's not perfect, but he can extend plays a little more than some of these other guys, and that's another thing I like about Baker. But he's a little different than guys like Goff and Cousins. Like, he's got a good ability on a more of a traditional 3rd and 9 to create a little bit, extend plays with his feet, whether it's inside the pocket or out. The biggest thing with Jimmy Garoppolo is, frankly, the accuracy. And I think some of that stems from a little bit of a lack of raw arm talent. Some of it's instincts. I don't think it's technique. He's got good technique. He's got one of the best releases in the game. But I think you just see some volatility from Jimmy for the accuracy. He will miss a crossing route. He isn't the best vertical thrower. The other thing he does is fairly similar to Baker Mayfield, which is a good reason they're next to each other, is he won't see some of those linebackers over the middle of the field. He'll throw a lot of picks over the middle of the field. It's a flaw in his game that I don't think will ever go away. He's very aggressive over the middle of the field, and sometimes you'll see Eric Kendricks catch on to that and make a great play as he tries to throw the classic Shanahan crossing route, and Jimmy just won't see him. So he's a flawed player, but I think he gets a really bad rap because of the fact that the Niners basically ran their way into the Super Bowl last year. But he doesn't get credit for beating the Saints last year. He doesn't get credit for how good he was against the Cardinals last year. He has some outstanding games in there when he can go a whole game without the accuracy showing up. And I guess whether you want to call it luck or seeing it, whatever you want to call it, without throwing those picks over the middle of the field, when those two things don't happen, he looks outstanding. When the accuracy is good and he doesn't throw picks over the middle field, I really like the rest of his game. He's not an elite vertical passer, but inside this scheme, he's really solid. So I like Jimmy. He's in this good quality starting tier. And then we have Jared Goff, who has really impressed me this season especially. We've seen Jared Goff without an offensive line, and it's not pretty, and that's why he's in this tier and not the elite top 10 tier. But I do like Goff more than Kirk Cousins, who is a really great comparison because they both don't do a great job extending plays. They're both decent athletes, right? They're not going to run away from a ton of NFL defenders, but they can run for a first down on 3rd and 6, right? Like they can use their feet a little bit. But both these guys are phenomenal deep ball throwers. But Goff, to me, doesn't get enough credit for having one of the most genuinely beautiful deep balls in the game. And when you pair that with Sean McVay, with what's proving to be one of the best receiving cores in the league, I love the nickname I came up with on the power rankings this year. He's Subliminal McVay. He is what Sean McVay would have been as an NFL quarterback if he had good physical traits. McVay is able to live through Jared Goff, and they execute the play call. It's almost all first reads. It's play action, but they're open. They're schemed up. They scheme up protection. They've improved the offensive line, and he executes. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes in rhythm, which is really good. So I think Goff is showing that it can work here. He got a lot of criticism, from myself included, that contract was not worth it. But when you have the play call that you have in McVay, and they've made up for some things in other ways. They're getting lower level offensive linemen to step up. They're getting some guys on the defensive side of the ball to step up. When you can do that, it'll make up for the Jared Goff contract. And I think McVay loves having a guy that is quite possibly a top 5 deep ball thrower in the league. He really throws an accurate, sharp deep ball with the velocity to get there before the D-backs can react, but also enough arc, right, to kind of hit the guys in stride. So I think that one trait is just beautiful from Goff, and he's seeing the field better, right? He's moving around in the pocket a little bit more. He's just playing very sharp, and I've just been impressed by what I've seen from Jared Goff. I don't know if I'll ever get to him being a great quarterback or a transcendent talent, but I do like what we're seeing from Jared Goff right now. And then at the top of this good tier is Dak Prescott, and I just want to see where we're at on time. All right, we're at 50 minutes, so we still got a lot to talk about. Of course, we're gonna end up going 2 hours anyway, but I'm glad we're doing this. So Dak Prescott, I've beaten this into the dirt. You guys know my opinion on Dak Prescott, or at least I would hope you do. I think a lot of you guys misconstrue it. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think what he's shown from a processing standpoint is really important, and what he's shown with his accuracy is really important. Now, I don't think he's an elite vertical passer. I think a lot of times his receivers make up for it. He'll have underthrown balls that his receivers adjust to and make some of the most spectacular plays. I think the Cowboys' highlight reels at wide receiver is unparalleled in the league. And a lot of that is they have to make spectacular catches to adjust to some throws from Dak. But again, people will take that and say, I don't think he's a good vertical passer. I do. I don't think he's a top 5 vertical thrower like you see out there. I think his receivers make up for a lot of that. I think he's a top 10, top 15 or so vertical thrower of the football. His arm talent's fine, and he clearly has a good processor. I think what people don't understand about Dak Prescott is that he's not Deshaun Watson. He's not Kyler Murray. He's not Josh Allen and Carson Wentz, where Now, Cowboys fans will freak out because I said he's not Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz hasn't been named yet. These two guys are very close, but they're very different players. Prescott is almost all rhythm, whereas Wentz is almost all improv, at least right now. And the thing with Prescott that drives me insane, and I always say he can't win the big games. I don't trust him on third down. He doesn't create enough, because it's true. He has the same problems that Kirk Cousins has, that Daniel Jones has, that Derek Carr has. He has the same problems on critical passing downs. When the defense is making you beat them. First down, you drop a beautiful ball where Amari Cooper screams open, or you get Michael Gallup on a one-on-one, or you get CeeDee Lamb open on a crossing route. He's great. He's great at that. He'll see the coverage, he'll throw an accurate football, and the receiver will make the play, and his yards are amazing. His stats are amazing. They have put, outside of Kansas City, the easiest job on the face of the earth at the quarterback position for Dak Prescott. The problem I have with Dak, and Cowboys fans always say, like, look at this play. See how wrong you are? He creates plays. It's the consistency in which he does it. Look no further than his week 1 attempt to come back and beat the Rams and his week 3 attempt to do the same thing against the Seahawks, or just inside that Seahawks game. Dak leaves so much meat on the bones on third down. It's the same thing I talked about with Derek Carr. Now, Dak does it at a higher level. There are plays. There are plays. Well, he'll see it, and he'll do nice things, and that's why it's so frustrating, because I know he can do it. It's the rate at which he does it. And people don't like to say that people don't like to hear it when they say he disappoints in big-time games. He can't win when his team needs him the most. But it's shown time after time again. There's a reason the Cowboys were 8-8 last year. There's a reason they're 1-3. Look, if you're going to pay this man, your defense, newsflash, if you pay Dak Prescott $40 million and you're paying Amari Cooper and you're paying all those offensive linemen and you're paying Zeke, and I don't know if you're going to pay Michael Gallup, but you're going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb. If you're going to pay all these guys on the offensive side of the ball and make things perfect for Dak Prescott, which, frankly, he has it. Lyle Collins, I got to pay him. If you're going to do that, I hate to break it to you, Cowboys fans, your defense is going to suck. You're going to need to consistently score 35 points. You're going to consistently need a quarterback that can create when they need him the most. That's the reality of it. So when I critique Dak Prescott, it's not because I don't think he's a great quarterback. It's because he's going to need to be elite if you pay him what he's asking for, which is close to $40 million. He wants what Deshaun Watson just got. So what this comes down to is he doesn't have a high-level ability to do something I say all the time. The ability to sense pressure and know how and when to manipulate the pocket to extend plays and create first downs. And it's not just me. It's not just me. It's Jerry Jones, who I've been saying all along is tired of it. He's tired of giving Dak this amazing team that he's paying so much money for, that he is personally drafting and bringing in these players. He's tired of people making excuses for Dak Prescott. He's seen it time and time again. It's we're down by 3 in the fourth quarter, and nobody's afraid of Dak Prescott. You're just not. His 2-minute drills look the same thing. He hits a few checkdowns. They get down to about the 50-yard line. It's 3rd and 6. He drops back, and he gets sacked. And like we saw against the Seahawks, it's not always because the offensive lineman got beat. Watch the play. Cowboys fans are like, he got sacked immediately on a 3-man rush. No, that's not how this works. Sacks so often are on the quarterback. Yes, the left tackle got driven backwards. The pocket started to collapse. Watch the play. I wish I could show it on here, but I'm not going to risk the copyright. You can go back and watch it if you got Game Pass, or watch a recap of the game on YouTube. I'm sure you can find one. Yes, the left tackle didn't win his matchup. He got pushed back. But it's not like the rusher was screaming free, right? Instead of navigating a 3-man rush, he could have spun out of it. He had outside leverage. He could have drifted to the right. Instead of that, he literally steps into the pass rusher. And I said at a time, I'm like, when are people going to realize that he doesn't feel the pocket well? And he doesn't know when to use his feet at the level that he needs to. So stop making excuses for the guy. Last year it was drops, despite the fact that his receivers made more amazing plays than they had easy drops. Stop blaming the offensive line when he walks into a sack. Stop blaming the play calling when 25 out of 32 teams point to their play calling. When are we going to run out of excuses for Dak Prescott? And again, the only reason I'm saying this is because he wants $40 million, because the Cowboys have these unbelievable expectations. Their roster is unbelievable. And they're going to win 8 games again this year, because they can't win close games because of how Dak Prescott plays in those critical moments. So that's my spiel on Dak Prescott. I think if he went somewhere else, or if things were different in Dallas, where he had even less weaponry but a better defense, I think things would look differently, right? I think he can win a Super Bowl in a different setup. But when you're setting it up where, like, we want him to be our Patrick Mahomes, our Deshaun Watson, our Aaron Rodgers, we want this to be all offense, no defense, I'm not buying into Dak Prescott at that point, especially at $40 million. So that's where I draw the line on Dak. I think he's a really good quarterback. I just ranked him above Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, Drew Brees, Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a very good quarterback. You know the difference, though? Jimmy Garoppolo is making $25 million. Baker Mayfield's on his rookie contract. Kirk Cousins getting paid well because he's played the market well. Cam Newton making league minimum. Ryan Tannehill making $25 million. Phillip Rivers making $25 million. Jared Goff makes $34 million because he's young. But I think Dak Prescott's in that tier. Not in where we're going. Not in $40 million, where you got to lose 3 quality starters on the defensive side of the ball because you're paying your quarterback so much. So that's where I draw the line on Dak Prescott, guys. I like Dak Prescott, but he's not an elite player. He's just not. He's a rhythm player with good, not great traits. Watch the film. All right. Next up, we've got the Volatile great. And these are guys that I have a hard time with because the sample sizes, the evidence, the tape, it's all over the place. So we're going to start with Kyler Murray here. So this is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we're into the top 13 here. And these were my 3 honorable mentions for my infamous tweet yesterday. So these guys, I think all 3 of them could, even by the end of the year, with the exception of one of them who's just playing like crap, who you know who that is. But all 3 of these guys have top 5 in the NFL quarterback potential. But there's just things about their game that I want to see consistently wiped from their play style, from their tape. So Kyler Murray, we all love Kyler Murray, right? Like, he is fan favorite. I'm waiting on his jerseys to be in stock. The Julio J back there is going to get replaced by Kyler Murray. One of the best takes on my channel, period, was early January when most people thought he was playing baseball. I watched 2 games and I was like, this guy's different. He's going to be the number 1 pick. The Cardinals are going to take him over Josh Rosen. The Cardinals fans were like, you don't watch football. You have no idea what you're talking about. Blah, blah, blah. Delete your channel. Oh, sorry. It happened. I love Kyler Murray, and I think he's heading that way. But the processing and decision-making from a passing standpoint need to step up. It showed against the Cardinals. I want to see Kyler Murray become a elevated. It's not a height joke. He's never going to be physically elevated. We know that. I want to see him be an elevated, elite, vertical passer that can also consistently make the right decisions in the short game. I basically want to see him be Russell Wilson, where he has confidence to throw the ball deep and make the right reads and know when to take those risks appropriately, but also take what's there in the short game. Because right now he'll take what's there in the short game, but he's trying to figure out what he can do, what he can get away with as a passer. And he learned against Detroit that there's some things that he can't do. Like he probably shouldn't throw across his body, although that was a great play by Jeff Okudah, but still probably not a throw he should make coming back across the middle of the field on a crossing route. There's decision-making things, and then I feel pretty good about his short game processor. I think he's still developing his ability to process defenses. But as far as knowing when the vertical throws are going to be there, because he throws a great deep ball, I think he's still developing as a processor. But that's something that I do think comes with experience. If anything else, it's recognizing defenses. Kyler Murray played 1 year in the Big 12, and he played 1 year as a rookie in the NFL. He's, I think, still learning the mental aspects of the position. So there's going to be games like that against Detroit where he gets figured out and he doesn't make the right game, throws in the passing game, and he'll create with his legs. But there's going to be the occasional time where you're scratching your head on Kyler Murray in the passing game for now. So Kyler, I think, is on the way up. Now let's talk about Carson Wentz, who is just getting demolished on Twitter. Someone said that he's the worst starter in the NFL right now. I'm not going to go that far. His offensive line's in shambles. His receivers are in shambles again. His top three receivers this week were I almost said crippled, but just a diminished version of Deshaun Jackson. And beyond that, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who we know can't play, and Greg Ward. And then his offensive line isn't playing well. So he's not getting the help again. I don't like his play calling either, but I can't say we can't make. I can't say that we got to stop making excuses for Dak Prescott, and then make all these excuses for Wentz. There's been inexcusable stuff this year. The first three games have not looked good, but again, I'm not going to just erase the great film I've seen from Carson Wentz. So the deal here is accuracy is becoming a real concern with Carson Wentz. I think some of the decision-making stuff, he can play in rhythm. He's not great at it. I'd say he's similar to Deshaun Watson and even Lamar Jackson a little bit as far as his passing decision-making. It's fine. I think with his physical traits, with his elite ability to sense pressure, navigate the play, extend the play, when you pair those things together, you can live with the occasional, not seeing the blitz on third down. But what's becoming a real problem with Carson Wentz is the accuracy, and it's showing last year, it's showed this year. But again, we've seen him throw accurately in his MVP season, so it's something that we're going to continue to collect information. I know, there's no denying. Cowboys fans get really mad about this, and I probably would too if I was a Cowboys fan, because Dak is clearly outplaying Carson Wentz. I agree with you, but if I'm going to project through the rest of the season and beyond, I would still take Carson Wentz over Dak Prescott. And maybe I'm just latching on to something of the past, and maybe we sit here in 5 weeks and he doesn't do what a lot of smart analysts are expecting, and that he regresses to the mean, right? And he starts playing better, because there's been flashes of brilliance in these games, by the way, but there's been more bad than good. If that doesn't happen, though, I might have to readjust this take. But as we're sitting here right now, I do think he'll improve, but the accuracy just hasn't been there. He threw a pick against the Bengals. It should have been on the outside shoulder. He threw it on the inside shoulder. He's sailing balls over the middle of the field, which is, I think, a problem for him. So it's something we'll continue to collect information. I do expect some regression back to the mean on Carson Wentz as we move forward. And hell, if I had to pick Cowboys Eagles for the division right now, I think Cowboys probably win it, but I think it's a lot closer than people think. The Eagles are only a half game behind the Cowboys. That division is just so bad. All right, then we have Josh Allen. Bills fans, I'm running short on time, but just relax. We get it. You love Josh Allen. He's been amazing. Can we enjoy it with you, please? Like, can we enjoy this growth with you? Because that's what it is. That's what we're seeing. It's growth. It's evolution. This whole, you were wrong. We're sick of it. This is even worse than the Lamar Jackson thing. Like, at least Lamar Jackson, it was year 2, his first full year as a starter. We had 2 years of Josh Allen running around, loose cannon, wild accuracy. Like, I'm sorry. No, we weren't wrong. I love Josh Allen as much as anybody in the draft. He's finally playing like I hoped he would, that he wasn't showing in the first 2 years. There's a while where people were like, you were wrong about Josh Allen because he was playing poorly. So no, that's Bills fans, that's not how this works. I'm sorry. That's not how this works. You don't get to blindly cheer for the guy because your team drafted him, ignore the flaws because you are Bills fans that, I'm sorry, frankly, a lot of you guys don't watch every quarterback in the league. Josh Allen has been an erratic, inaccurate passer who makes amazing plays. You guys, I love Josh Allen, but I don't get to enjoy it because Bills fans are screaming at me, telling me how wrong I was. That's not how this works. He's showing us something he hasn't shown before. Show me the clip of him playing in 2018, 2019, of him throwing with touch, of him limiting the turnovers, of him throwing this accurate. You can't, because it didn't exist before 3 weeks ago. So to say he's a top 5 quarterback because he had 2 great games against quite possibly the 2 worst defenses in the league, and then a good game here against the Rams, this was a huge week for Josh Allen. It doesn't erase the last 2 years. Hell, there's still tendencies in these games where you're still sitting there with 1 or 2 plays a game where you're like, why? Why would you make that throw, Josh Allen? Now he's weeding those things out, which is what I've been saying for freaking 3 years he needs to do. And he's finally doing it. Let me enjoy it, Bills fans. He looks great. He's not a top 10 quarterback yet. He's just not. He's playing like one. There's a difference, right? There's projection and there's reflection. Reflecting on the last 3 weeks, yes. Absolutely. But we have 2 years of him being wild and crazy. And it takes more than 3 weeks to go from that to... I had him heading into the season, and most people agreed with me, right above Sam Darnold as a volatile starter. And that was pretty much consensus. Hell, even Bills fans agreed with me that there's things about his game that he needs to correct, and he's doing it. So stop this you were wrong crap. Now, you want to go back to the draft and, go to the people that say he needed to play tight end or that he could never be a good starter because he's too inaccurate. Go after those guys, but at least know what you're talking about. I had Josh Allen as the number 2 quarterback in that class. I applauded the Bills for trading up for him. I gave them an A+. I've stuck with them. I am thrilled to see him playing at the level that I projected that he could get to. But don't tell me I'm wrong about Josh Allen. I know exactly what I'm doing here with Josh Allen. So I have him ranked 11th here. He's been incredible. The accuracy, the touch, the processing, it's getting so much better. But I'm not going to overreact to 3 weeks and rank him ahead of guys that are still showing it at a high level that have shown this for years, right? It's about sustainability. It's about projection. Okay. Whew. I think we can go a little faster through these next top 10. There's really, I think, only one controversial thing in here. I have not mentioned Joe Burrow's name yet, which gets hot because I talk about sample size with Josh Allen, about not overreacting to 3 weeks. I'm going to talk about why there's a big difference with Joe Burrow when we get to there. So Matthew Stafford is next. Now, get this, Bills fans. My comparison for Josh Allen was a faster Matthew Stafford coming out of Wyoming. And I said it could take a few years. Here he is right next to Matthew Stafford. Give it a couple more weeks and I'll rank him above him. But I still think there's a chance that the rate of these crazy plays, chucking it up into double coverage, I think there's a chance that rate comes back. I don't know if it will. We need to find out. Now, Matthew Stafford, just no one watches the guy play. Like, I would wager that there's some really smart Bills fans out there. So I bet there's a lot of Bills fans that have watched all the games like I have. But I would wager at least 60% of this Bills mob haven't watched, other than a highlight on Red Zone, haven't watched a throw that Matthew Stafford has made this year. I would bet a lot of money that is the case. Matthew Stafford was equally amazing this week against the Cardinals. He was a significant reason they won the game, just as Josh Allen was a significant reason they beat the Rams. He is accurate. He is decisive in the vertical game. He can extend plays. He just doesn't have the help around him. I just think Stafford has kind of stuck himself in this 8 to 10 range of really good quarterbacks that don't quite do enough to elevate in the way that, say, Rodgers has done or Wilson has done, where he's on a bad team and is just turning them into a Super Bowl team. You gotta do some crazy stuff at a super highly consistent level and not make mistakes at a super high level. And Stafford he's not at that amount, but he's just a very sound, fluid, high-level passer. He's a top 10 quarterback. We've seen it for a long time. So for now, I will say that I will rank Stafford over Josh Allen. Now, sure, Josh Allen's outplaying Stafford through 10 games. No one's arguing that. But if you want to do a ranking where you're projecting and reflecting as well on a career resume, I'm taking Matthew Stafford over Josh Allen. And then these next two guys, it's tough because we have Matt Ryan and Tom Brady, who we kind of know what these guys are, right? Like, they are elite minds, they are accurate, they're sharp, they play in rhythm, they don't make a lot of mistakes, they're accurate. I think I already said that. It's hard to decipher between Josh Allen and these guys, right? Because Josh Allen does things that these guys just can't do. He just does. But he also does things that these guys won't do, right? These guys aren't going to have that costly fumble in the third quarter. They're not going to, make the crazy throw into double coverage late in the game. So it's tough because they're so different stylistically. It's really just about seeing Josh Allen and Kyler and Wentz and Dak get that resume above these guys and the consistency. I don't really need to talk about Ryan and Tom Brady because they're kind of playing like we expected, right? They're just really solid, accurate rhythm players, elite minds at the position. And then you have Ben Roethlisberger, who's really impressed me. He's kind of, to me, just really close to back to a couple years ago where he was in this top 7 range. He's a smart player, top 7 mind as far as processing and decision making. He does some things that guys like Ryan and Tom Brady don't do because he'll extend plays a little more. He'll buy some time in the pocket. He'll roll out. He's not particularly fast, but he'll stiff arm you to create some room. He'll shrug a tackle to create some room. He hasn't been the most accurate in the vertical passing game, but he's done enough. I've just been really impressed with what I've seen from Big Ben. He's great. Got some good help around him. So I think he's back into this level. And then we have Joe Burrow now. So this is a tough sell, right? He's played 3 games, and I'm saying he's a top 6 quarterback. And I just said that Josh Allen, I'm not ready to overreact to a 3-game sample size, right? I realize how that looks, right? But let me explain it, okay? Josh Allen, coming out of Wyoming, was viewed as a polarizing prospect. As I said, we saw 2 years of him in the NFL playing at a polarizing level. Joe Burrow, consensus number 1 pick, probably the most, not probably, I think at least in the last 10 years, indisputably the most clean mental quarterback we've ever seen. The ability to read defenses, the ability to make good decisions, stacked on top of the ability to create plays and have those wow plays where he's, eluding pressure and hitting guys on the run and making smart decisions in the vertical game. He was the most complete, other than his raw arm talent, right? He was the most complete quarterback I've ever seen come out of college. And it was like, yeah, we only saw it for 1 year, but my God, like you couldn't watch Joe Burrow tape and say, yeah, that guy's different. Like he does everything you want at the quarterback position. And I talked about this. Other than raw arm talent, where he doesn't have Josh Allen's arm. Like he can't effortlessly throw a 50-yard post, sure, but he's good enough. He's got Tom Brady arm. He's got Matt Ryan arm. He's got Big Ben arm. He's good enough with his arm. But every other trait, you can't watch the first 3 games that he's played and tell me he isn't top 10 at every other trait as a quarterback. I know it's a hot take, but we don't have a lick of bad film from Joe Burrow playing in the SEC for 15 starts and now 3 games in the NFL where he's got the worst offensive line in the NFL in front of him. So what are those traits? His pre-snap processor is elite. He is already up there with all of these guys. Maybe not Tom Brady and Matt Ryan and Big Ben and Drew Brees, but he's up there with Dak. He's up there with, honestly, he's up there with any of these guys that aren't these 40-year-old veterans. He knows exactly what the coverage is. He's made one mistake as a passer, and it was him scrambling on a broken screenplay where he tried to play hero ball and flip it to the running back. That's not a passing mistake. That's just a dumb, I'm never going to do that again, hero ball mistake. He has been flawless from a decision-making standpoint. Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, all the guys below him. And this goes back to his college tape, right? It just didn't show up. He just knew he makes the right decisions. He reads defenses. That was never a question coming in. And in a COVID season where he barely got to practice with these guys, he barely got to practice at the speed of the NFL level, he's been absolutely flawless from a processing defenses, reading coverages, the things that have made Drew Brees and Tom Brady elite quarterbacks, right? They just don't make those mistakes. They just don't. And I feel very confident that that's going to be the case with Joe Burrow. And then you add in the fact that he is Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson. He is those guys from the waist down. So I see Joe Burrow as he is Tom Brady from the waist up. Arm talent, accuracy, mental, and he is Aaron Rodgers from the waist down. And whatever side of his brain controls the ability to sense pressure and knowing when it's appropriate to step up, to hang in the pocket, when it's appropriate to bail, when it's appropriate to do, all of this and duck and spin and get out of pressure. He's got that. And I'm confident that that's what we're getting in Joe Burrow. And I pray to God that the Bengals can get this man some protection because he's taking so many hits. And I don't want to see this man break down, but I am extremely confident in that analysis of Joe Burrow. That he's already at that level. He is just a different type of dude. He really is. And I know like Bills fans that disagree with this about Josh Allen or Cowboys fans that disagree with this about Dak Prescott. I encourage you. I'm sure a lot of you have watched Joe Burrow, but go and actually genuinely watch him and see the little intricacies that he's doing. He is playing like a 5-year pro. And he did it at LSU. So that's the sample size thing. This is what I expected Josh Allen to be, was this polarizing player coming in. And he was. And he's slowly weeding those things out, or very quickly this year. Joe Burrow, I expected those things to translate, and I'm seeing it right in front of my eyes with a terrible surrounding situation. Absolutely terrible. The Bengals were the worst team in the NFL last year. So it's hot takey. I get it. I totally get it. But I'm going to trust my eyes on this one with Joe Burrow. There's only 5 quarterbacks in the NFL that if you said you get this quarterback today, there's only 5 other players that I'm going to say I want that guy instead of Joe Burrow. So that's where I'm at there. Then we get into the top 5 that I think this is pretty agreeable. So you get Deshaun Watson, who is having a rough year. His schedule's been brutal. We're going to see some more moments from Deshaun Watson, and he was really good last week. They lost to the Steelers because their defense can't make a stop. But he was really good. I think we're going to see some regression back to the mean on Watson for sure. There's going to be some more Deshaun Watson hype this year. He's so spectacular, right? And then you have Lamar Jackson, who is exactly who I thought he was this week, where if he gets too far behind, I hate saying this so much because he has shown some nice things as a passer, but it's true. Like he's not going to get into a shootout with Patrick Mahomes where he's got to throw 30 times, especially on this team, and go in and win. He's not accurate enough outside the numbers. He's just not. I mean, watch the tape. 2 dramatically underthrown balls on go balls that if that's Patrick Mahomes, if that's Aaron Rodgers, if that's Russell Wilson, he's hitting those guys in stride, and they're going for touchdowns. And Lamar Jackson underthrew them. One was incomplete. One should have been picked. He doesn't have the elite ability to navigate pressure and keep your eyes downfield while doing so, right? He can get out of pockets, don't get me wrong, and he's got a good clock, and like he can feel the pressure, but what's different with Lamar as a passer that comes up in these shootout types of deals is you'll see it from Joe Burrow, you'll see it from Patrick Mahomes, you see it from Rodgers, Russ, Big Ben, Tom Brady, Stafford, Ryan. These top 10 quarterbacks, whether they're super fast or not, the difference is when they start to move around the pocket, they're not doing this. They don't need to say, okay, my tackle got beat, my guard got beat, I need to spin and get out of this. They don't need to do that. They just feel it, right? And as they feel it, Drew Brees does this too. As they feel it, they're keeping their eyes downfield, they're processing the defense, and they will know what they need to do with the ball. Lamar's not there. He just isn't. I don't know if he'll develop that or not. That's probably the biggest criticism I have of Lamar right now as a passer. The accuracy, like it's fine. I don't want to keep begrudging the accuracy. It was really bad coming out of college, which I did like Lamar, right? In my what I would do mock draft, I had the Bucs taking him 7th, I think, to get rid of Jameis. But like the accuracy was never great coming out of college. It was really bad his rookie year. He improved it last year, and it's been pretty good this year. Like he's got relatively good accuracy. But if you want to talk about consistently hitting go balls, I don't always trust him. But obviously what he brings as a runner is spectacular. He's going to dump on the bad teams. They're going to go on and win 13 games this year. They're probably going to win the AFC North. And I think he's still growing as a passer. What I saw the first 2 weeks was really promising. What I saw this week was a step back, but I'm not going to, there's a reason I didn't have Lamar on the elite tier to begin with, because he hadn't shown that stuff, and he still hasn't. And I'm actually kind of excited about this, right? Because we've seen this before with a lot of MVP winners. It happened with Cam Newton. It happened with Matt Ryan. And I think we're seeing it right now with Lamar Jackson, where they have this amazing season, and it was a lot of reasons. A lot of parts of it was they had an outstanding surrounding opportunity to really maximize their strengths and all that. And then I point out a couple flaws because I don't think they're complete players. And those flaws show up the next year because a couple things don't go the same way. They get under a bigger spotlight, and people start to catch up. And people now are like, oh, yeah, Lamar, yeah, he can't really get into these shootouts. He's not this elite passing quarterback. But now what happens is he develops those things. He works on some of them. I get to sit here with a even lens and acknowledge those things. And as people start to fade him, they fade him back towards my original perception of him. And I get to enjoy the player because I don't have to be called this hater because I acknowledge a couple weaknesses that the guy might have. And I think that's kind of where we're at with Lamar is like, he's a flawed passer. Can we say that? Can we say that now? Or are we still haters for saying that? I don't know how you can like legitimately watch, even just throw out his rookie year if you want, but I mean, that rookie year does exist. Just look at his last 20 starts. Like, if he gets down early and he's got to resort to a traditional passing game, he doesn't look like Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't look like Russell Wilson. He doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers. There's a reason I had Aaron Rodgers ahead of Lamar heading into the year. Because passing is what wins in the NFL consistently, especially come playoff time. Lamar just is not there quite yet. But what he brings as a runner is spectacular. It's elite. If they can get the right game script and they can stay in the rhythm of their offense, which the Chiefs came out and said, nah, you ain't doing what you want to do against us. We're going to put up 35 points if we have to, but you ain't playing that ball control stuff on us. Like, you're going to have to pass to beat us, and they couldn't do it. But overall, I think that people are coming back to where I've been on Lamar for a while now as a fourth, fifth best player, best quarterback in the league, and I can just enjoy him now and cheer for him like I've always wanted to do without people calling me a hater. I just don't like to overreact to stuff because more often than not we see what's happening right now, and I think there's a decent chance that happens with Josh Allen. I don't know. And then we got the top three. I mean, we've gone on for so long. If you disagree with this right now, I just don't know what to tell you. It's Rodgers 3, Russ 2, Mahomes 1. Now, Mahomes, I think, or Russ, I think, is actually closing the gap a little bit with Mahomes, but I will say that I think that if I am going to analyze this a little bit, the biggest difference between Rodgers and Russ is I would say Rodgers a little better pre-snap and playing in rhythm, and that's always been a criticism of Aaron Rodgers. But I will say I think Rodgers is better at taking what's given, being a little more consistent on a drive-to-drive basis, less 3-and-outs. I think you do see a few more 3-and-outs with Russ because he does tend to do the big, spectacular stuff, right? But Russ's deep ball is possibly the best ever. But, I mean, Mahomes is right there with him. I would say that's kind of the difference between Russ and Rodgers right now, but they both are similar styles playlistically, right? Like, they want to create. I'm losing my voice now. Got to wrap this thing up. Let me just take a sip of this. But, Russ wants the spectacular. Rodgers wants the spectacular. Mahomes, I think, is still a healthy blend of that. Mahomes, where he's developed the most to me, is taking what's given and having all of the answers to the test. The Ravens tried to blitz him. He's like, are you freaking kidding me? Do you know how smart I am? Like, do you know? Like, I don't know if I just was wrong on it to begin with or if he's developed. Either way, I don't really care. Fact of the matter is, Mahomes is seeing the game at an elite level. He doesn't just have all the traits. He's not just elite accurate, but he just sees the game so well. You can't blitz him because he's going to find his one-on-one. You can't drop in his own coverage. He's too smart. You can't run man coverage. He'll see that and just start running on you. I don't know what you do against Mahomes. I mean, really, I think the best thing you can do is just try to keep everything in front of you and just say, we're going to force you to just kind of take what's there. Hope you get bored and take a deep shot, and we take advantage of that, and we got to score 35 points. We got to beat you 35-34. But with these weapons, the way Mahomes is seeing the game right now with his traits, and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and the offense that they've designed, that doesn't just let Mahomes play in structure, it doesn't just let him improvise, it also creates easy stuff for him on screens and elite misdirection, and just, I think we might be seeing the best team in NFL history. And it's just unbelievable. I regret not betting on them to go 19-0 because, man, I just think you have to play absolutely perfect to beat the Chiefs right now, and their defense isn't even that bad. Like, their defense is capable. It's not a great defense. The linebackers suck. But they got a pass rush. They got some guys that can make plays in the secondary. God, the Chiefs are just insane. I have no regrets picking them to win the Super Bowl. I think that's a clear pick right now. That was a lot. I got to wrap this thing up. That's my quarterback tiers list. Let's get into the mailbag here. Yeah, we're at an hour and a half. This thing backfired, but wow, it was fun. All right, we're gonna rip through the mailbag. I'm sorry, Patreon. I really got to get going because I gotta get my picks video done and studs and duds today. So I gotta kind of, if it's not a clear mailbag question, I might skip over it because some of these are longer messages. This is a question about Robinson and Odell wanting out. Would the Packers trade for them? Well, the Bears would never trade Robinson to the Packers, and I don't think the Browns want to trade Odell. Two Bengals questions. ZT said, I don't know who ZT is, but criticism. Oh, Zach Taylor said criticism of the O-line is overblown and statistics are on his side. Oh, Zach, please, come on. I already don't like you, but dude, open your eyes. That offensive line is so bad. And a lot of Bengals fans are calling for Zach Taylor's job after going 2-16. Do you think Zim would ever get fired and come back to the Bengals? I don't hate that idea of Zimmer coming back to the Bengals. I don't know if they would fire him this year at least. They just gave him a big extension, and it's kind of a turnover year. But yeah, I don't think Zach Taylor is the answer. I mean, that quote only inflates things. Sorry, J-Mac, I missed your fantasy question, but I appreciate the DM. Here's a question. How do you adjust your Madden rating for an increase in production of a number 2 or number 3 player if the number 1 is out? So I think what you mean, like in like Calvin Ridley's case, like how much does Julio Jones being out and him still producing change your rating? Well, now that I say that, did Calvin Ridley actually play well this week? I haven't gotten to the ratings, to all my ratings yet, but I mean, it does make a difference, right? When you see a guy step up or not step up. I mean, it's something you consider. It's all part of the puzzle, but I am curious just in like Calvin Ridley's case, how he played. Yeah, I mean, with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, PFF receiving grade 89, 81, puts up over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns each week. Without him, receiving grade goes down. Obviously, you never overreact to one game and stuff like that, but it's just something you know in the back of your mind. You're like, if it happens again, you say, all right, yeah, Calvin Ridley, really great number 2, probably not a number 1. I've kind of always felt that way about Calvin Ridley. But, you know, it just that, I hope that right there kind of showed you the thought process on it. I would say that alone would never change my opinion on a player. It's just a little note, right? Everything's just a big piece of the puzzle for each individual player. But it is something I would consider. From Nick, would the Eagles' offense look any different if the Eagles drafted Jefferson over Jalen Reagor? Love your content. Keep up the work. Yes. Here's a big thing with... I've been very critical of Coach Peterson. he had this idea of we're going to get all this speed, right? And a lot of these guys are hurt, so it hurts his ability to prove that to be true. But we're going to get Rieger. We're going to keep Deshaun Jackson. We're going to bring in Hightower and all these guys. They brought in like 5 speed threats. Now, the thing is, you still need to scheme those guys up, right? Like, you still need to keep defenses honest enough that they can't just say, like, we'll let those not let them go. But you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to have that deep threat, you still got to utilize them, right? Ravens utilize Marquise Brown really well. There's other examples out there. But they draft Jalen Rieger, who kind of needs to get schemed up. And he's been injured, but it's not like he's been incredible when he's been out there. Justin Jefferson wins one-on-one. He gets open. He wins contested balls. He's amazing after the catch. Carson Wentz likes to throw over the middle of the field. Justin Jefferson would have been a perfect fit as that slot receiver. So, yeah, I do. I mean, for one, he'd be healthy. Jalen Rieger hasn't really been healthy, but yeah, I do. I think Justin Jefferson would have opened that game, the field up, and Justin Jefferson's good in the screen game. He run blocks. He would have been such a better pick. I mean, I love Howie Roseman, but he screwed this up taking Whiteside over DK Metcalf. Like, if you wanted a deep threat, you should have taken DK Metcalf. Yeah, I think that was a mistake, and maybe Rieger proves us wrong over time, but, I mean, clearly Justin Jefferson was more ready, and the Eagles wanted that impact day one. From Kenneth, what's your opinion if the Eagles trade Carson Wentz next offseason and the Eagles restart and tank? I don't think that's an offseason away. They still have too much talent on this roster. They got depleted by injuries again. You see guys get a really, really long leash when you win a Super Bowl. They're tied to Carson Wentz financially. I think it would take a whole nother disaster season next year before they even start to think about that. If this continues, I do think that would be the right course of action. If they can't get into the playoffs again next year, yeah, I think you fire the coach, you trade Wentz. If he's playing like this, you trade the veterans you can and just start it over. You got a Super Bowl out of this. But yeah, I don't think this year, I think that's an overreaction to do that this year. But I am starting to fade, especially the coach. All right, from Trevor, is Minnesota's defense incompetent only due to the lack of talent, or is it possible Mike Zimmer is not being innovative schematically as he once was? So I talked about this with Arif, where there's going to be this weird balance where Zimmer, not only is he not going to have the elite pass rush that he's used to, that he's going to have to adjust to, which could come back with Yannick and Daniil, but more importantly, he's never wanted to play rookie corners. He's always ran a diverse scheme, right? A lot of cover 4, cover 3, man, cover 2, 3 match, everything. He wants the full array. If he looked at a spread at the end of the year in his world, it would be a nice split between every kind of coverage. And to ask a young corner to do that is asking a lot. It's one thing to take a corner and plug him into Seattle where you're running cover 3 70% of the time, and you only got to know a few things about other schemes, and you just learn cover 3 for me, please. That's a lot different than saying we're gonna have you quarters on first down, cover 3 on third down, and cover 2 on second down. That's a lot, and we're seeing these corners, I think, mentally really struggle with that. And I think Zimmer's scheme is sound, right? I have no questions that Zimmer, when he has the talent and the smarts in front of him, there's no doubt in my mind that scheme works. But I will say he's stubborn. We know Mike Zimmer's stubborn. And I haven't looked at the spread on the types of coverage he's running. This is kind of a guess on this one, but I would wager that this is true, that he's not changing his scheme enough. But it's also personnel. Like, dude, the Titans, if you go back and watch that game, the Titans could have ran the ball up the middle with Derrick Henry for 4 yards a carry all day. And I think they started to do it in the second half. The interior defensive line for the Vikings, I think that Michael Pierce opt-out was huge for them because they are just getting steamrolled up the middle. Like, Shamar Stephen is their best run defender. And Yannick sucks defending the run, by the way. Danielle Hunter is their only good run defender on their D-line, and he's not in there. So he's not getting any favors from the front office this year. From Lions, is it time for the Lions? That was last week. Okay, 2 days ago. It's only been 3 weeks, but he's been really bad. Do you think it's time for the Eagles to give up on Wentz or just stick it out? We just kind of answered that. I think we'll see some regression back to the mean, but if we don't, there will be a time where it's time to panic. Spelunker, thoughts on Blake Cashman now that we're a few years down the road since he was drafted? I remember you were super high on him with Bush and White. He's been injured. He's been injured almost his entire career. And as I said when he was falling, like when I'm doing my draft from this desk in Minneapolis, I don't have his medical records, right? That's why he fell. That news came out after the draft. If I knew that he was just an injury risk waiting to happen and the doctors told teams like this guy is a huge medical risk, if I knew that, I obviously wouldn't have had him up there. When he's been on the field, I think he's showed his flashes. But that's been the deal with Blake Cashman. Like, I don't want to make an excuse for my evaluation, but I mean, there's no denying that if you can't get on the field healthy, like you're just not going to develop and you're not going to get opportunities to make plays. So I mean, that's really all it's been with Blake Cashman. From Brandon, something I've been joking about, something my poor soul has actually started to buy into. Let's say the Jets end up with a top 5 pick. It seems probable they will, agreed. They're in a position to get a quarterback like Lawrence or something. Should the Colts make a move for Sam Darnold, and what would said trade look like? Okay, I really like this idea. And you guys know I like Darnold. Now, from what I've seen from Lance or Fields, I'm not giving up on Sam Darnold for those prospects. I think they are just as much risks as keeping Sam Darnold is. But if it's Lawrence, I would take Trevor Lawrence. Even if I still believe in Sam Darnold, I just think even if Sam Darnold turns it around, you're going to have to pay him soon. That the probability that Lawrence can be at least what Darnold is now is highly likely, and the probability that he's got a higher upside, because he's basically Sam Darnold with a much better arm coming out of college. He's not like an elite processor, but I mean, he's got it. Like, I think we all agree Trevor Lawrence is a generational prospect. So I think if it's number 1 pick, which if they lose to the Broncos tomorrow night, they very well might have the number 1 pick, which, side note, Trevor Lawrence on the Broncos would be woo. Yeah, I think that if that happens, the Jets should frankly trade Sam Darnold in a reminiscent of when the Eagles got rid of Andy Reid. Like, it's just not working out, man. We love you. We wish you nothing but the best, but we're going to go in a different direction here. And I think that could end appropriately. From the Jets' perspective, I think that makes sense. Now, this is obviously in a world where you fire Adam Gase, where, I mean, at the end of the day, ownership just needs to change here. And I would feel awful for Trevor Lawrence if he ended up on the Jets, because I just think as long as the ownership is as bad as it's been, going back to when they traded Bill Belichick, you're just not going to turn Trevor Lawrence into what he can be. But that's a different thing. I think that would be the right move from the Jets' perspective, and God, yes, from the Colts' perspective. Bring Rivers back a year, sit Darnold like Darnold's only 24 years old, right? He's the same age as Joe Burrow. Just say, Darnold, like, dude, just take, like, dude, honestly, just, like, take the summer off. Take the summer off, go to Maui, and just, please, just work out, watch baseball, don't drink too much, but just, Darnold, you had a rough go of it in New York. Just relax, reset, get yourself right, get your mind right, and I want you to show up in August and come here ready to work And I want you to watch Phillip Rivers. Hopefully Phillip Rivers doesn't have too many bad tendencies by then. And we want you to just regroom yourself. And there's a chance you could be Andrew Luck again someday. But I think that's what it would take for Sam Darnold is just like, dude, just whatever happened in New York, do whatever you can to just forget about it. Think back to your time at USC. Think about you as the Golden Boy prospect. Remember that the Browns took Baker Mayfield ahead of you. Just whatever motivation you need. I love that idea for the Colts. It's a long shot, but I don't think it's completely unreasonable, right? And I think the pick that the Colts would have around the 20s would make sense for the Jets to do that trade, right? Yeah, I think it's a real thing to think about. Vic trolling me, why is Lamar only an 84? From Connor Lee. Talking about Dak. Basically, no, he's not a top 5 QB, but he's a really good one. And if Jimmy G can get a Super Bowl, then Dak can. I mean, I agree. I ranked him ahead of Jimmy G. But that's not the expectations, is it? That's not the way he gets discussed on Twitter, is it? From Justin Oakes. Feel like the Eagles are going to go 5-10-1 or something and then have a high pick with a lot to figure out. What would you do if you were the GM? Would you fire Doug? Go after Bieniemy in the offseason? I think I've kind of covered the Eagles thing. I don't think we're going to get a scapegoat firing this year. I think it would be next year. Drew Smith. Where do the Cowboys go from here with Dak? Yeah, I mean, it's such a tough question because you got to look at it from Jerry Jones' perspective too. Like, he's so torn. I think he's right to think like, man, like to start doubting that they can win a Super Bowl with this team. I think he's reasonable, but I mean, how old is Jerry? Like, how long is he going to be doing this? He wants another Super Bowl before he's got to give up the keys to the franchise. It's so hard. You have to have a better option in place. I mean, I honestly think it's possible that. I mean, I don't see them being able to take a guy like Fields or Trey Lance. I just don't. Man, I mean, I'm so critical of Dak, and then when you come to me with what's your answer, I mean, you're right. It's tough. It could just be the Cowboys are just screwed. Because if you let him go, you go to Andy Dalton, and maybe, just maybe, he plays really well. And he plays like he did in 2015. You have a good offense, but that $35 million difference, because you got Andy Dalton, I think it was a 2-year deal. I could be wrong about that, but you got Dalton for nothing. You let Dak go, you get that extra third-round pick, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we can go and, make a big trade for a Jamal Adams type of guy or whatever it is, or we can sign a big free agent. We can retain our talent. We can start to build up this defense. Alden Smith might need to get repaid here. And then you can say, all right, we build this pass rush with Alden Smith, and then we can fix this secondary. We can get a real defensive coordinator in here. We can have a real defense and have more of a balanced team, which it's a different mentality. You're not going to have this explosive EPA off the charts, putting up 50 burgers on the worst teams in the league. You're not going to have that kind of team, but you might have a more realistic, coherent unit that way. I don't know. I don't know what the true answer is, but I do feel pretty good that this ain't it. Unless that defense turns it around real quick, but I don't see that happening. Especially in the long game. Like, their secondary, everyone is up for contract. Leighton Vander Esch, I don't know what the deal is with his injury stuff, but he's coming up on an extension. DeMarcus Lawrence is getting up there in age, and he's not playing like elite DeMarcus Lawrence. All right, one last question. I love how I ended up going 2 hours anyway. Of course I did. Should the development of Josh Allen be encouraging when it comes to Drew Lock? I think Josh Allen was starting from a much higher point than Drew Lock. I mean, yes, of course. We're seeing quarterbacks able to develop better now than ever for whatever it is, whether it's better coordinators, better receivers, rule changes, better technology to film study, whatever it is. Quarterbacks are showing a better ability to develop. So yes, that's encouraging. I will say that Josh Allen was starting from a much higher point, and I think Allen coming out had much more of that it factor. You could see it in his Wyoming tape. He did some of the stuff at Wyoming. He created plays. He made stuff out of nothing. The arm talent was some of the best we've ever seen, if not the best. I think Josh Allen has traits that Drew Lock just doesn't, from an athletic standpoint, and from some of that it factor stuff, from some of that ability to sense the pressure and get out and do that stuff. I mean, sure. But if the Broncos are picking in the top 5, I don't think you pass on a quarterback. I just don't. I mean, I think we're gonna get to see Drew Lock again before the year ends, and the Broncos I think will be pushing for that to happen because they need to see more. They need to know what they have. They really do. All right, man. Wow. It was supposed to be a shorter show. Apparently, I'm just incapable of shortening my show. I need a co-host or something that'll get me to shut up and keep me on track. But nonetheless, super fun show. Appreciate you guys for watching. Like the video, leave a review for the podcast, tell your friends, all that good stuff. Sign up on Patreon. You can get access to the exclusive mailbag. Peace out. Thanks for watching.